Hi Scott, it's Will Henshaw here. Is Jesse there as well?
Yeah, I'm here as well. Sorry about that.
No,
Wonderful to chat to you again, Will. Thank you very much.
Loving it, mate. Absolutely amazing.
well, awesome to be back again, and awesome to be talking about this very, very cool film. I was looking forward to it, and wasn't at all. It was everything and more. Well, my opening line: Debt Collectors, awesome movie, reuniting French and Sue, who we first saw in Debt Collector, which is a truly enjoyable, properly cinematic film, which I think the thing I said last time is I like the sense of cinema about it. Fantastic naturalistic lighting, sound mix is cool, very cool music with shades of Sergio Leone, Tarantino, Cowboy Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry, Bullitt and Lethal Weapon, all wrapped up in a Hyundai, which I think is a very cool way to make a film.
That is awesome. I want to steal that. I want to steal that line. That's brilliant.
Please do. How did you originally come up with the idea of reinventing the buddy movie, back at the first film? And then what prompted you to bring them back again after French and Sue had seemingly died in the first film? Was there anything particular, apart from the first one being a great success?
I was twisting your arm, wasn't I, Jesse? I was very eager to get, because I had such a great time. Obviously, I have a great relationship with Jesse and we've done some great work together. Cool. But I really enjoyed working with Lewis on the first one. And I think Jesse might feel differently, but I actually felt like I was disappointed in the way the first film ended, to be honest. I thought, oh man, I want to bring these guys back.
Well, I mean, from script to film, there was such an enormous change, wasn't there, Scott? The initial script that we both read was a type of a film. It had, very, very poncy artistic and, sort of ambitions. And then when we made the film, it suddenly came out in a very working class, sort of really, really familiar and wonderful way. And it no longer sort of, we cut out a lot of the sort of arty stuff. Some stayed in with the cows and things like that, which are okay. But it suddenly took on its own life. And its own life was based on this incredible relationship that the two characters created by Scott and Louis had. And it really, really worked. And it was a great surprise to all of us how well it worked when it was completed as a movie. I mean, I think the executive producer, Ahud, I turned around and looked at him in the theatre. He was just shaking his head because he had hated the script and then saw the movie and loved the film. It was an interesting thing. And initially I turned down Scott. I wasn't interested in the sequel. And he pitched me, sold me on an idea. And at that point, once I got excited by it, down to Scott's enthusiasm primarily, but also a very, very, the idea of Vegas and the characters, I didn't want to let it go. And I think we ended up, working feverish, probably something like 32 different drafts and just really, really polishing it. And it became very exciting. It got its own life and then you don't want to walk away from it,
One of the questions then is sort of the relationship between Scott, you and Louis. It's a very close one and a very natural one. Is that something that you foster when you're on set, or is it something that, does it just come naturally, or is it something you have to work at?
Yeah, I think it came naturally to us.
It does feel really natural. It just looks.
Yeah, but it's not like we're there going, oh shit, we've got great chemistry. I mean, you don't really realize it until you see the film put together and that everything's working. And, you see some scenes edited and you think, oh, this is really great. And we've got a good camaraderie here. But what was interesting was going into the second one, knowing that we had that chemistry in the first, and almost worrying that we weren't going to have the same chemistry again, because we felt like, oh well, are we reaching for it more now? Are we hammering it over the head? Are we because before it was just effortless and it just happened, but it was something we zoned in on this time, and it did. We were okay and it all worked, but those were the questions that we were asking at the time, wasn't it, Jesse?
Yeah, no, it was a tricky thing. We didn't know who we were going with either. I mean, Louis was cast in the same way that any actor is cast. I went through dozens of people because it was such a meaty role, and we knew that, they'd be carrying, 50% of the picture almost. It was an agonizing process casting it. We got down to 3 people, and we were weeks away from filming. Right, Scott? It was not an early or an easy decision to make. I knew Louis was a criminally underrated actor because he'd been in and read for me before, and I'd almost worked with him on Charlie Valentine. And then a director called William Kaufman works with him, is friends with him, and he's friends with myself and Scott. And we sort of did a bit of due diligence, and the general sort of scuttlebutt was that Louis was someone that was just very, very good, but had not been utilized correctly yet. So we kind of had an idea of what he was going to bring, but I mean, he's tremendous and very, very, very easy to work with as a director. Tons of ideas, but most importantly, with regard to sharing the screen, almost no ego. Would you say, Scott?
Oh yeah, he's a team player. It's all about the movie. It's not about him. He's he's there to make the film good, not just his own performance. And for me to work with an actor like him, it lifts my game as well. So I always want to work with a good actor, because that's good for me. But the other thing about Lewis, and what a lot of people don't realize, I mean, they will after this film, but he's a really good martial artist. He can handle himself. He's legit. But we have a little bit of a scrap in this one, and you can see that he's got a lot to offer in that regard as well. So as well as being a really talented actor, physically he's fantastic as well. And that was important for me to get a sooo that you could believe could kick somebody's ass as well.
He's like a fire hydrant. He's absolutely fiercely strong and very, very coordinated and moves like a dancer. It's a very, very interesting. It's not what you expect at all when you see Debt Collector, quite how physical he is in real life. It's a joy to work with him. He has no ego when it comes to directing, which makes my life extraordinarily easy. There's no, how's this angle? Is this is my good side of my face? Or, he chose, he has a scar on the back of his head from a hair transplant. He was the one that chose to shave the hair around it and show it off because he felt it made him look like a little bit sort of damaged, and then, the pot belly, doesn't mind that. That was grown for the first movies. And there's no hiding it. I've worked with actors, no need to mention any of them. They might have been ex-wrestlers, but they, I had to always frame the shot so it was above their belly because they were so sort of, self-conscious, which is part of my work. That's my work as a director. I don't mind doing that. It's completely fine. But with Louis, it was absolutely anything's game. I'll show it. It doesn't matter. And that's really, really quite fun. You go in there and it's the ego is the story, and Scott's like that too. It's a joy working with him.
But having said that, Jesse, you might have to hide my pot belly after this quarantine.
I somehow don't believe that.
Neither do I.
Believe it.
I think your idea of a pot belly is a little bit more critical than most other human beings.
Okay, maybe.
Well, picking up on your thing of talking about fighting styles and being able to fight, yes, and you mentioned that the fight you have with Lewis at the end is a little one. It's a fairly full-on balls out one, so it looks and feels real, and it's fantastic, nice and gritty. It's your style in the film is sort of, in a way, sort of old school punches and full-on hits, and a few BJJ I noticed inspired moves in there as well. How did you decide what approach to take to it and sort of make it more gritty or less gritty? What was the fighting style that you decided to stay with? Was it just keeping it real?
Yeah, keeping it real because it is a realistic sort of plot and setting, and the fighting, I wanted it to be gritty and down to earth. That fit the tone of the film. Sorry?
We wanted to get them exhausted, to see them just to the point where they couldn't even breathe by the end of it because they've just thrown everything into this fight. That was important to me. The style just had to be like the rest of the film, real life plus 10% fantasy. But I think the lads did fantastically. I mean, it looked like it was an excruciating sort of experience trying to get through that fight. I think we had some issues on it as well, but it was it had to not be an easy fight. And I had initially fought Scott on it and didn't want it in the movie. And then he brought up one of my favorites and his favorites, which is They Live, the John Carpenter picture. And I've worked with Roddy Piper and Keith David. I've done 5 movies with, and I thought, hell, at that point I was sold. He sold me on that one,
That's one of my all-time favorite fight scenes, not because of the choreography or the way they're performing it, but the way the characters are, the way they act it, and just the comedy that is involved in it, and the fact that you think it's finished and then it doesn't seem to end. So we definitely paid homage to They Live, and it's obvious when you watch the film. But of course, we found an alleyway, and they had a bit of shade in their alleyway, but the one we had was in August in the valley, and I had that bloody leather jacket on.
We had people on the set that were fainting. It was absolutely. It was like an oven in there. It was crazy.
Yeah, I had to go back to the trailer and be put on a drip for a couple of hours before I could complete the movie. Wasn't that right? I was in a right mess, dehydration.
Unbelievable. And really, we should have pulled the plug. Any director with any sense of safety in his actors would have pulled the plug at that point. But you volunteered to come back out, so we finished it.
I wouldn't let you pull the plug. You know that.
Yeah, it was an incredible trial. It was amazing. You know, we had crew members that were being taken to the hospital because it was so hot that day. But it was it's not easy.
It feels like it watching it. You feel it doesn't feels like you've given it and are giving you your all, and that's I think the truth of it. It's a fantastic fight sequence, along with a ton of other ones as well. They're all excellent. Which brings me on to the next question. Is again, so more of a Scott question. There's no question this type of fighting, physically hard work and painful too, and damaging, as you're talking about. Did you stunt double any of it?
Did I use a stunt double for any of it?
In the fight scene, I think only for the very, very wide angle, because it was a point of view through the car, and we had you off doing first unit somewhere else, didn't we? Doing a quick shot.
I think I was in the trailer. On a drip.
One very, very, very wide angle of a stunt double being dropped on the hood of the car, and not because it was a stunt, because it was a photo double, because you were indisposed at the particular point. But with Scott, you have to understand you can't really double him in the same way that you do a normal lead actor, because Scott moves so much better with such a unique manner that you put a stuntman in, unless he's a world-class martial artist and able to copy Scott's particular style, it's going to stand out. So unfortunately, Scott's created this situation where he has to do pretty much 99% of his own stunts and all of his own fighting, really. Wouldn't you say, Scott? Other than
I mean, look, I want to do as much as I can, but I'm not gonna. When it comes to getting hit by a car or smashed through a window and things like that, things that could break a bone or cut your face or anything like that, you have to get a stunt double to come and do it, because if you should get hurt, and you're going to have to shut down the production, and we don't have enough money to shut down the production. The train is not going to stop. So one thing did happen on this movie, didn't it? I pulled my hamstring in the chase. Yeah. So we had to have some help from a stunt double who probably should have had a better haircut. Yeah. But these things happen.
The foot chase was a double. But as honestly, as I say, the big thing with Scott, it's a plus and a negative. It's a plus because you get a real authenticity to the action, and we can put our cameras anywhere because we're not having to hide the stuntman's face. Yeah. That's the plus, But on the negative, it makes shooting a little trickier because you got to be very, very careful. Our leading man's in there doing things that could twist his ankle, hurt him more than once. A stunt that could potentially be a career ender. I've watched Scott do, and it's my heart is absolutely in my throat with fear. It's like, God's sakes, the film's going to stop. And Scott might get hurt.
Well, for instance, on Avengement, that big pub fight. Obviously, that fight we filmed at the end of the whole production. So on the very last day, I said, "Okay, I'm going to do the stunt, get smashed through the bar." But that was because I knew I didn't have work the next day, and the film was done. So exactly. We could do, yeah.
Did you know Scott has been nominated for a Tour Stunt Award for that? Usually, it's a award that's absolutely only for stuntmen. They're very militant about not awarding it to directors or actors because it's the unsung hero. But Scott is up for an award for that because he did all of his own stunts, which is pretty unique, and I'm very proud of him for that.
It's about time that sort of side of the industry is recognised properly. And
yeah, exactly. I think it's also about time Scott was recognised properly as well for what he does.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I really appreciate that question. That's it's a good one, because I think people need to know when they see a Scott Adkins film, they're watching Scott do this stuff. And listen, we're in the process of, the business of make believe, so it's not a necessity. But I think there's an extra something special when you know that your actor's, risking life and limb and bleeding for you and having to be put in a hospital and put on a drip to give you that entertainment. This is not CG. This is not 4 different doubles like Captain America has. This is a guy going out there and he's bleeding for you. He's like a Roman gladiator in many ways. He's going out and that's entertainment. So Jackie Chan did it, and I think there's not really many others that do to the in this day and age anyway.
I think that's kind of
seemed like a good idea when I was 12.
Well, it still does because it looks good. But I like that bit at the end of the chase when the kid gets knocked down and he says, "I wanted to be a stunt guy," and you go, "Really?" I thought it's very nice reversing of itself.
We loved putting that in, didn't we, Scott? That had to stay in. They tried to cut that line out. Production, I think they didn't quite understand why it was there. And we're like, no, you guys don't understand. That's that's the director and the lead actor.
That's a perfect line, and it says it just nicely timed as well. I'm
really impressed you noticed that. It's great. I think the most nervous I've been with Scott was Accident Man when he wanted to kick that guy off the motorbike, because that, to me, I just couldn't see how he was going to land without getting tangled in the bloody wheels. Do you remember that, Scott?
Just got lucky, I guess. Yeah, I didn't know how it was going to work either. I just figured, fuck it, let's do it. That was the last day as well. There was one more day after that, I think. But
I couldn't see how you were going to land. I could just see you landing either. I've done it, and I landed on the bike, and it hurt me very badly, and I didn't do it very well either. But what you did was absolutely graceful and balletic and incredible. You landed on your feet, if I remember correctly, as well. Absolutely. I still don't really understand.
I'll tell you this. I didn't practice it. I just visualized my success in bed the night before, and luckily for me, it all worked out.
Impressive.
Just a sort of another, take it down a slightly different thing, but the same sort of idea of when you're in the middle of creating and doing these massive fight action sequences, how do you remember lines? Because one of the key things of this movie is all those lines that you pop back and forwards between each other and anyone else that are sort of, you've got to deliver them. You can't just drop them. You've got to sort of say them. How do you work that into the action in your head when you're acting, when you're doing it?
Well, Jesse will know exactly where I'm coming from with this, because it's a very important thing to mention. It's like, for me, I know what my audience expects of me, and they expect some action and fighting, and I expect that of myself as well. But the end fight, the fight with Lewis, for instance, we've got this big dramatic scene that leads into the fight. And so I've got this one little guy on my shoulder saying, the actor devil, going, "You need another take. That wasn't a good enough performance. You got to ask Jesse for another take. Make sure your acting's good, mate." And then I've got the other devil on the other shoulder, the stunt devil, going, "Fuck the acting. You need to get this fight done. You need to make the action good." And it's this internal struggle that I have, because I want both to be great, but you can't. You just so. You know what I'm saying, Jesse?
100%. And we've done both, haven't we? We've done fight scenes where we focus on the martial arts and and don't pay enough attention to the acting. And both of us feel that those particular ones, there's no need to mention anything here, didn't quite work. And then we've done other ones where we've spent too much time on the acting and not enough time on the choreography. And we both agreed that so it's a real fine balance, and you have to have a foot in either court. And thankfully on this, Luke Lafontaine, Louis, and Scott worked out an incredible fight. It was broken down into shots, previews, angles, everything, with dialogue worked into it. And all three of them are very, very sympathetic to the need to have drama within a fight scene, and not to have one or the other outweigh, in importance. And the guys did fantastically. For me to take any credit would be completely wrong. It was down to Scott, Luke Lafontaine, and Louis, really planning this fight out and doing great work with it. Really inventive and imaginative, and so the preview is a video storyboard. Basically.
We didn't previs that one.
Not as much as you could have done, but you had ideas of it. Your video, you know.
We went through it. We went through
Yeah.
it, me and Luke, and actually because the fight with Lewis was at the end of the schedule, then we'd meet up.
I think we did previews without you in it, right? Where he played you.
Yeah.
So I had an idea what was going on. Scott obviously adds that to it, but the point is, it's heavily planned out ahead of time, and as Scott said, he's very, very diligent about making sure both camps get their money's worth. You know, the people that are there for the dramatic essence, and the people that are there for just the pugilism. You know, it's a delicate walk. He does it very well.
I think
we need the best of both worlds. You need good action, but if your drama's not working, and if no one gives a shit about what the story is, then no one's going to care about the action anyway. So it's a balancing act.
It becomes a stuntman show reel if you're not careful, you know. So yeah. Which has a limited appeal, but if you know, it's a really fun process, and it's great to work with Lewis and Scott because they're so sympathetic to both, you know, disciplines, or all of the disciplines that are involved. But I'm so pleased you enjoyed that fight. It was these guys gave everything to it. I mean, everything. You know, blood, sweat, tears, hospital visit. You know,
it's good because it goes on, and it goes on beyond a bit where you would normally think, well, that's it, the end of it. It's got a roll to it that just keeps on giving. So I think we're getting close towards time. Is a question then, was this film easier to find the money for, and were you an integral part of that, Scott? No, I see you got a exec producer credit. Does that make it easier? And what was that sort of journey like in actually bringing this one and getting the production on the road?
I'm not the man to find the money, so I can't speak to that. My executive producer thing is more of a creative thing, but
it's a key part, I'm sure, because people see, well, you're one of the thanks.
The entity that made the first film came to us, you know, with this idea for this, you know, do you want to make a second film? They went to Scott directly. Scott came up with this fantastic sort of log line. And then they brought me in, you know, very, very, you know, I'm very lucky to have been called back again and offered it to me, you know, and we went from there. So the financing was ahead of the idea. You know, the financing was the first thing that came, which makes it a lot easier than running around with the script and trying to get it financed. But we've done that too. You know, Scott did it with Accent Man very diligently, spent years, you know, spent a lot of his own money and put that together. So. You know, it happens either way, but in this particular instance, it was Bleiberg coming to us and saying this is what we'd like to do, and us saying, all right, let's have a think about it, and then Scott coming up with this sort of fantastic premise, and us, you know, fleshing it out from there. So it's the best case scenario when the money comes to you. Doesn't always happen that way, but they did very well on the first film. Extraordinarily well, and critically and financially. So it sort of made sense to them, I guess.
Does that mean that obviously this is going to be as good a great success as the first one? Does it feel like there may be a bit of a long-running saga? Because it does to me. It feels like this sort of. I'd love to see more of this.
It'd be wonderful. You never know if it's going to be a success. It's such a strange business now. Films don't go to theaters, and even then you didn't know if it was going to be a success. But now it's all, you know, it's logarithms and algorithms, and you know how it pops up and who gets it. But you know, we're very lucky to have Samuel Goldwyn. They're phenomenal and really, really sympathetic to, you know, the cause of you know, the filmmaker and making sure the film is released correctly. And then it goes to Netflix after that. And Netflix have been very, very good to us. Each film that Scott and I have done together has gone to them and has become steadily more and more sort of successful. So we owe those two entities an enormous debt of gratitude because they do just a fantastic job getting our films seen. You know, I don't know about how the money flows and what happens there, but certainly these films are successful enough for them to keep coming back to us, and for that we're very thankful.
Another final sort of almost final question is debt collectors in the US and payback in the UK. Could you just open that idea up and what that means? Is it just to sort of differentiate, or what's the thinking?
Very in a nutshell, a different company handled the DVD and VOD release for the first film. They didn't do a particularly outstanding job. in the US. The film did fantastically well on Netflix, which was after VOD and DVD. When Samuel Goldwyn picked up the sequel, they obviously didn't want to, throw their bag in with those guys, not knowing what the reception would be like. Honestly, I would have gone with Debt Collector 2 because I thought that the Netflix, the success from there would carry across, but it's their choice. It's their discretion. It's their, they're allowed to do what they do, and that's simply that. At this point in the game, we go with what the big boys want. The adults.
I suppose it's it's the wheels within wheels that you don't know quite what they're going to do.
As to Dazzler going with Payback, I'm not sure. I'm a huge fan of the Mel Gibson movie, so a little bit worried about that. But at the end of the day, we're our very own film, and that's that.
It's Debt Collector 2.
Exactly.
It's people, and I look forward and definitely expect to see Debt Collectors 3, maybe 4. Who knows? I think it feels like that relationship we have between the two of you is just as much more story to be told.
It's so good. These guys are so good. They do such good work in the picture, and they're so committed to it. I would do another 3, 4, 5. I think it would just keep going. We could come up with interesting, exciting ideas each time. So, baby, I'm there.
Yes, please do. Excuse me, I've got a cough.
COVID-19.
Oh, you bring us back to that. No. Hopefully not. Well, I think I'm being told that our time is up. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for answering questions. I've got loads more if I could always send them across to you another way. But either way, thank you very much for making Debt Collectors 2, or whatever it's going to be called. It's great. I recommend it. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you very much for having us. Really appreciate it. Well,
look forward to talking some more.
Thanks so much for the help.
Thanks, mate.